It's Thursday, March 13th, and this is the 1909, the State News' weekly podcast featuring our reporters talking about the news. I'm your host, Alex Walters. This week, a striking campus art project draws attention to the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. We'll talk about what the display means and how it made its way to MSU, and here to tell us all about it is Emilio Perez Ibarguen, a campus reporter here at the State News, one of the first guests of the 1909. Back in the day in this new format of the show. Yeah, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Alex.
It's great to have you on again. Let's start this way. For those who spend time on MSU's campus daily, you probably already know what we're talking about because you've probably seen it walking around. It's hard to miss. But for those who don't, it's about 60 red dresses hanging off of these sticks all around Beaumont Tower and the library and those nice lawns inside of Circle Drive. And it's striking. It's these bright red dresses that are hanging and blowing in the wind. I remember biking on our campus, I think after spring break when I first caught it. And you have dug in, you've talked to the artists and the curators and someone from the institute that studies this kind of thing at MSU. And you've written this great story talking about this exhibit and what it means, and you're here to tell us about it today. Before we get into anything specific, just tell us, what are these red dresses that people are seeing all over campus?
Yeah, so these red dresses, which, like you said, are suspended in the air around campus, are part of something called the REDress Project. And this was brought to campus through the MSU Museum, but it's also a campus-wide collaboration between the Buell Botanical Garden, the Native American Institute, and other on-campus partners. Yeah,
and so what are these red dresses? What do they symbolize? What do they mean?
Well, these red dresses, again, so the REDress Project is behind an artist named Jamie Black-Morset, and it's really about drawing attention to this ongoing crisis of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls.
Yeah, and in your story it says that these dresses, they kind of represent these missing women with this striking image of these empty dresses hanging in the wind that are obviously, lacking the person, that would be wearing them, that would be inside of them. And so your story, it sort of explains that, and you also have data nationally about the breadth of this issue. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
So Kevin Leonard, the interim director of the Native American Institute here at MSU, told me actually that 4 out of 5 Native American women have experienced violence within their lives, be it physical violence or sexual violence.
Mm-hmm. And you talked to the artist behind this exhibit that's meant to kind of draw attention to that issue. And this isn't the first one. This is part of this larger project.
Yeah, so Jamie Black-Morset told me that, they've been doing this art installation for almost 10 years now, and it's traveled, various college campuses across Canada and the United States. And so again, this is just the most recent installation of that project.
Yeah, and how did it make its way to MSU? You talked to the curator of the MSU Museum that's sort of running this installation. Why did they feel it was important to have this striking exhibit, so prominently displayed at the center of campus?
Yeah. So Devin Aikman, the director of the MSU Museum, told me that, you're kind of alluding to it right here. It's so striking, you cannot ignore this. Mm-hmm. And so really it's about this issue that might not be known on a campus that's majority white and drawing attention to this crisis and just informing the public.
And it's so cool to see it, too, in such a public space where normally, the MSU Museum, I think, has a lot of exhibits that cycle throughout the year, but they're inside the museum or they're in sort of the off-campus gallery underneath that garage on Grand River that sometimes you'll see them in as well. But seeing this, I bet every single student at MSU has seen this. It's just so prominent in the center of campus. It's cool to see it displayed so publicly. What is the significance of the red dresses themselves as opposed to just, other colors? Is there something behind that?
Yeah, so Black-Morset told me that decision to use the color red really came from drawing from her own identity, I guess, as a Native American. She mentioned that the color red in a lot of cultures around the world is a very sacred color. It represents life, it represents blood, it's what animates us, it's what connects us, is what she said.
Yeah. And the dresses themselves, these red dresses, they're just any red dresses, or there's a specific significance to the actual objects themselves?
Well, so these red dresses, so about 40 of them, it's 60 in total. 40 of them come from Black-Morset's personal collection, which she tours around with these installations, and another 20 or so actually come from Native American communities in the surrounding Lansing and Okemos area.
Oh, like from local communities. These are dresses that have been worn by Indigenous women?
Exactly, yes, and they're all worn by Indigenous women.
That's very cool. And so are there plans to have, more of these exhibits at MSU, elsewhere?
Well, for everyone who I talked to, they clearly have enjoyed this installation. They think that it's bringing light to an important issue. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there is an overwhelming feeling that we shouldn't need to highlight this issue, right? When I spoke to Kevin Leonard, one of the last things he told me was, this is a great exhibit, but ultimately we hope that in 10 years' time, we don't have to be doing this again.
In a perfect world, there wouldn't be this issue to draw attention to with these dresses.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's a great story. You've done a great job of, explaining the significance and some things that people might not know just when they see this exhibit while they're walking around campus. And thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. That's all for now. We'll be back next week with fresh reporting from the great minds here at the State News. Until then, the stories we discussed and plenty more available at statenews.com. Thank you to my guest, Emilio, podcast editor Anthony Brinson, and video producer Brad LaPlante. And most of all, thank you for listening. For the 1909, I'm Alex Walters.